to be a hat day. You got a few dignitaries here that I'd like to introduce. Some of the dignitaries had other things that they had to do today, but we'll go on with our part. This is Dolores Mosser. She is the
Vice President.
She lives in Lubbock. She's very familiar with all of this, and she helped Sammi Simpson put these signs together and get this thing rolling. We also have Jeremy Deering, TxDOT. Here, he's responsible for putting the sign up and doing all of this mowing and everything. His guy right here, Muleshoe, I think.
Thank y'all.
And we have Sheriff Richard Wills right here. And the rest of you, I think, know each other. You've been around, so we're here to dedicate a brand new historical marker. Primarily the one that's responsible to get both of them. I'm just gonna turn it over to her and let her kind of tell you how this all came about.
Good. Luckily, I like to talk, so I didn't prepare things. I'm going to wing it here on this deal. My name's Dolores McCall Mosser. I grew up in my father was Short McCall. I'm a county commissioner for years. My Aunt Holly was on the McCall Phoenix. My father was a mile west of here. I grew up, his farm was over here. I had grew up roaming these streets. Sorry, I live in Lubbock. Roaming these back roads, dirt roads, and turn roads, and horse trails, and out and mound trails. I've done all of it. So I love this part of Bailey County. I've been on the Texas Plains the Heritage Trail, the Texas Park Commission. It's our job to make sure that all of our we have 50 counties, make sure that all of our counties get the notoriety they well deserve as having wonderful people and great communities and wonderful history. Every place has a story to tell, and that's our job, is to make sure those stories get told. We've worked with Tom. Tom was on our board at one time. We've worked with Sammi Simpson was our fire engine, and she was kind of that legend that could. And Sammi worked real hard with keeping the history of Bailey County. Places, beautiful heritage center in Muleshoe. She's worked tirelessly with that. She's aged it now. The first marker that we saw when I first met Sammi, the cemetery, and she was county historical commissioner at that time. So I met with Sammi and we got to talking. I had learned about the Trail of Living Water, the Pista de Agua Vida, from doing research. I was a history major at Tech, and I had taken a class that was on regional history. In regional history, you go and look at the history of the land, look at the geology and the geography, and it's not just what was written on paper, but the stories. And I spent a lot of time looking at old maps, and the best map I ever saw of Bailey County was done by 7th graders in, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the lady's name. She was a teacher at junior high.
McKinstry? Mrs. McKinstry? At Watson Junior High?
Yes.
LaVon McKinstry.
Yes, LaVon. And they had made a map that showed where all the ranches were, and they used the prints of the ranch to identify that, all the towns, how the water flowed. And on that map was this little line that said Fort Sumner Wagon Road. And that was the first time I ever knew that, coming straight from basically the Bula school here, right that way, past the game refuge. This trail went all the way from Lubbock to towards southern New Mexico. It's 160 miles. And nobody knew about this. We got to talking that day, and she said something about the old road. And, like, I know about the old road, you know about the old road. And so we tirelessly, Sammy spent hours and hours and hours in the courthouse and on the internet searching for information. I want to read you what this says. It's the Agua, it's the trail of water, across the John Electric Cotton, that's up in Bula, on the Capron, linking several lakes in the region. 3 lakes in Bailey County lie along the trail. Howe Lake, where the Mackenzie expedition camped, that was the first American Army expedition up in this area. Monument Lake, which is over southwest of Bailey, and White Lake on the refuge. By the late 1970s, a trade route known as the Comanchero Trail developed along the road. In the late 1800s, the Fort Sumner Wagon Road leading from Colorado City in Mitchell County to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, where it turned north to join the Santa Fe Trail, overlapped up to southern Agua. By 1881, a nail route followed the trail. Today, the lakes, which had been used prehistoric, probably 14,000 years of people going up and down this road. No longer, lakes no longer provide water, as there is only space. Sewage from the springs live here. We know that the fly just have water and then they don't have water. But these spring-fed lakes, at one time, Coyote Lake was 2 miles across. That's how big the lake was. So anyway, that's where we are. That's why we were here, was to make sure that this part of Bailey County has a great story to tell, and this is part of that. Then after we got this marker, we found out this cost, I think it's over $2,000 to get a marker. Is that right? It's expensive. You have to go through an application process with the Texas Historical Association. Give boundary and all these things have to happen. And so we decided that there was a program called Undertold Markers. That's where you could get it for free if you had a really good story that was about something that was lesser known. And the lesser known part of this story is that Pastores, the sheep herders from New Mexico, would come to this area because of the water. It's all about the water. They would come to this area and raise their sheep. The little canyon that Paul was mentioning, in that canyon there's rock walls, and there's also little areas where they found artifacts where the sheep had been corralled in these little entrances, little gaps in the canyon over there. So we looked at everything we could to find out about the Pastores, make sure that we knew our husband came out of their families. They were families. Native River, more favorite. And Pastores actually went around on the west side of John Western Colorado. They were all over this area. So we wanted to make sure we had a free marker that could tell the story. And then we submitted an application. For whatever reason, things didn't go well, and we didn't get the first marker. So I actually hand-walked my application into THC the next time around, make sure all ducks were in line, and they got the marker, and then COVID happened, and then they lost their boundary. And so then there's the different shipping thing and the storage thing. And so, you know what? We've got it here now, which is what's important, but it had its own journey of arriving here in Bailey County. So that's a great story. But anyway, I don't know who needs to. Bailey, that Tom's going to read the marker for us. Well, I'm going to ask that Holle Humphries and Ty Kreidler, Texas Tech, they're both members of the program. I think Ty maybe. He's right here. You're tall. Y'all do this.
What do you mean, unveil it?
Yes, because you're tall. You're tall.
All right.
You want to come with this? Oh, wow.
That's what we need.
Oh, beautiful.
Want me to read it?
Yes, go, sir.
Pastoral sheep herders in communities along the Pike River in the lead living for bring their north. The stories arrived as capital-based sheep operations along the Canadian 1840s, locating Comancheros, traders used specifically to locate their business freedom. The pastorals followed stories coming from northern New Mexico use the upper Pecos River to travel into the Canadian River Valley, while southern New Mexico stories follow the trail of water to the east and northwest Texas. One of the large-scale pastorals, Jesus Ferreira, moves thousands of sheep south from the Canadian River across the Red Colorado River to the lakes of Death Valley, the stacked leachy rocks, corrals, as well as boxed-in springs, which help manage the sheep. Nearby Yellow House Draw, a branch of the Brazos River, expands into a broad canyon north of the Muleshoe Wildlife Refuge, where remnants of a rock shelter found along the Canadian caves along the Bula also provided shelter for the Jeffers sheep industry. But, my mother worked for the Census Bureau in 1950 to 1950 census, and I was just a little boy, but I remember her coming home and tell me she told me she found this little canyon. It's pretty beautiful. Said it's covered with trees and there's all kinds of rock fences down through that canyon. I never saw it until I was in high school out down here. Probably rapidly. Right. I ran up on this little canyon and I instantly knew this is what my mother was talking about. It is pretty. It's got a lot of junk around it, but it's pretty. If anybody would like to go see it, we can leave here in Caravan down there. We can't get back on the property. It's private property, but it's on the county road. You can see it. You can get an idea of what we're talking about. You can see it.
Everything is perfect. Okay, we got the little girl back there. Okay, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Notice that he's not in the picture because I accused him of being part of the federally protected witness program. This is Yellow House Draw. So this was a fork of the Brazos River at one time. But you can see how the terrain is so flat, and all of a sudden you can see the indention, but it runs basically all the way from Pep all the way to into Bailey County, central Bailey County, and there are lakes that go along that. Every say you were traveling by horseback or on foot, every day you would come to a new place where there was water, a spring, a lake, when you went to the sandhills, you could dig into the sandhills and you didn't have to, because the groundwater was so high, you could find water that way. In fact, they say that Coyote Lake, the way Coyote Lake got its name, was because the coyotes would dig down in to get to the water, and so that's where that story comes from.
Now in this canyon, we came here a couple years back. There is a cavern, like a cave in the side of the bank. It's probably right around the bend past those trees. And we noticed that it was very wet there, so I'm imagining that might have been a spring seep at one time, maybe a more live spring. And there was a little fence built right on one section, and I've been told that was to keep the animals out of the freshwater spring, so that people could also get their fresh water there. But we're not sure. You know, it was just speculation. But that little cavern is very similar to at the Yellow Houses, where they have Ink Lake, and there's the water carved sort of this cave shelter into the side embankment, and it had that same kind of topography. So that's why we thought, well, this looks very similar, which is why it probably was the Pastores, at one time, a Pastores site.
You have to remember, someone was asking about the geology. You have to go back to where the rivers were. At one time, the Brazos River flowed out of the mountains of New Mexico through here, and the two draws were Yellow House Draw and Blackwater Draw, and those merge in Lubbock, and then the Brazos River goes all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. But at some point, millions of years ago, the Pecos River starts inking its way north, and it captured the headwaters of the Brazos, of the Yellow House and Blackwater Draw, and so these became distinct rivers. There was no longer the annual river flow that would go down, but the groundwater was so saturated that the springs would come up, and then there were the playa lakes, or the spring-fed lakes. There were salt lakes, as we all know about salt lakes in this area. So the water was no problem. There was water here. The military, like in the mid-1800s, skirted this area because the Comanches let it be known there wasn't any water up there. There's no water. So Comanche, Kiowa, Apache, this was their area. It was called the Comancheria. It was their homeland. They knew it like the back of their hand. They knew where all the water sites, where the animals would be, where the buffalo would migrate. Then when the military that was on that marker talked about Mackenzie coming up, they went basically from just around where would it have been where they came up?
Oh, you're talking about the
Mackenzie. They went through Blackwater Draw that's there at Filton, and then basically just went north all the way to Fort Sumner that way. So that was the first breach of the Llano by the military.
Where they came up was, you know that road that goes north of Rawls and it goes up to Floydada? You know, where it goes down in there and you come back out of the canyon? Right within a mile as you come out of the canyon, Mackenzie, one of his outrider scout group went that way, and then another contingent was going up the canyon, and they took out somewhere just west of there, and then they went up through the draw,
right,
up north, and then cut over. That was 71, I think, 72.
Yes. We're celebrating a bicentennial, commemorating, better word, the Red River Wars from 1874 to 1877, where the military was able to discontinue any advance or livelihood by the Native Americans in our region, and they were all moved to to Oklahoma, to Indian Territory, where they were housed. The Comanches had one last hurrah of battles that went basically from up northern Panhandle all the way down to Paladura. The famous horse kill happened around Tulia. But Quanah Parker, at one point, there were some renegades that were still out basically in the Blue Hills over by Bledsoe. Quanah Parker made one last trip to convince them that it was time for that group of people to come into the reservation, and that was the last habitation of our area by the Comanches. And that was in the late 1877, that area.